Hey everyone, it's Tech Thursday. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Cassie.
And this week we decided to talk a little bit about a theme that we have going at Breaking Even. So we try to have a theme every month of things that it informs the blog, it informs our newsletter, and it just kind of like gives us a little bit of structure.
Yes.
So this month's theme is systems, because we felt like that December always gets crazy for everyone, and whenever you get busy, that's when you notice that maybe you're not the most efficient person on earth at work or at home.
And it's kind of perfect because, like, that's kind of when my, I think in, like, the end of November, I started realizing that maybe my systems for, like, because I work part-time across the street now, and then I come here, and I'm also, like, living in a couple different places, so I have stuff everywhere, so I was like, I need to figure myself out. And
Yes.
get some systems in place so I don't feel as scattered as I might be.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
So,
And
anyway.
we notice, yeah. And a lot of times what we think about is like we only do systems, or we only figure out a system when either our lives get crazy busy or when we have to tell someone else how to do something.
Yes.
Because then, when you have to explain a task, and it's kind of like when you have to teach something, is when you notice that, oh, wow, this is like wildly inefficient or really terrible. As you start trying to explain it. So we decided to tackle systems, bless you. And so we have a few blog posts on the site about, dealing with systems related to task management, systems related to messaging, systems related to managing personal relationships. I think that one's coming out in a week or so. But the point is that, like, you can come up with systems even for things that you wouldn't come up with systems for. So since Cassie and I have either written or read everything that's going out, what have you noticed this month reading all this stuff about systems that you maybe hadn't thought about before?
Well, so it's funny because, like, I didn't until, like, very recently start worrying about systems or noticing, like, how systems could go into different places. Like, I used to be hyper organized in high school, which might be funny because and, like, up until, like, the end of college, like, I was pretty good at my routine. Like, I knew like my to-do list in college, like, my to-do list now is just whimsical, like, things that I have to finish, but in college it was like 7 to 7:30 do this, 7:30 to like 8:40, like,
Yeah.
in like 15 down to 15.
I've had an agenda book since I was 14. Like, I've always have, and I actually have all my old high school agenda books, so I could, like, go back and be like, oh, what did I do on September 15th of 1994? I could tell you what I was doing with a reasonable accuracy.
And it was funny because, like, my friends would be like, wow, that's so cool, and, like, they would try to do it, and, like, it just always fell apart. But I was, like, really good about that. But I think part of me got kind of sick of myself for, like, the 15 years that I was super hyper-vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the past 5 years, I've been, like, really...
You went off the rails.
I went really off the rails, and I've just been kind of like, like, maybe I'll do this, maybe, like...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the things I needed to have done got done, but, like... very recently, like, that just no longer was gonna fly. So.
Right. Well, I mean, when your time gets more compressed, right, it was why you realize that, like, for example, like, I'm the slowest vegetable chopper ever. Like, I can cut vegetables, like, all day long, but I'm not very fast at it. And I dated a guy who was a chef, and he was like, yeah, you're, like, really terrible at cutting vegetables. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I guess it's at the end of the day, and I don't really care about being efficient about that. But it's when I'm pressed for time that I wish I was, like, better at being efficient at certain things.
Yeah.
And that's what systems allows you to do. And so kind of the big systems person that when I think of systems, I always think of this guy named Sam Carpenter. And I saw an interview with him, and basically what he was talking about in terms of thinking about systems in your life is that if you look at a house, and then if you think about underneath the house, there's, like, you have pipes, you have the electrical wires, you have the insulation, you have all these, like, things that are basically, you have the surface stuff, but then you have the underneath stuff that's actually helping everything run. And so if you look at anything in your life, you realize that you can develop a system for it. And you might not want to look at your whole life that way, but, if you're short on time, what I noticed about my system breakdown is my meal prep. So I'm, like, relatively newly single, right? So I'm, like, preparing food for myself. And I do things like come home at 6:30 at night, open the fridge, and just expect to, like, I don't know, figure something out. But that's not, like, a long-term strategy. I have no scheduled time that I do the grocery shopping, for example. I have no way if I run out of something. I didn't have a little place that I kept a list to write things. I mean, that sounds so stupid when I say this, right? Of course, like, that's why it isn't working, but it's, as I listed the things, that's when I realized that, like, oh, I have a breakdown in, like, getting new food into my house and having time to prepare food. So that is causing me to not have meals. So I need a system to get those things done so that I can get to the other part. And set times to do some batch cooking, because I'm not going to, like, make a beautiful 3-course from scratch meal for myself every day for supper. I'm just not going to. It's not going to happen. I could barely want to do it if, like, I have people coming over. So I'm definitely not going to do it just for me. So yeah. And I think my thing is that, so we came up with our post ideas for the systems thing. And what I realized is that, like, oh, here's areas of the life, that you can have systems for. And I realized there's, like, huge gaps. There's some areas that I've, like, really come up with great systems for. There's some areas that really haven't even touched. And I almost didn't want to write those blog posts because I was like, oh, that means I have to, if I'm telling other people about this, that means I have to finally figure it out for myself first. So, yeah. So that's been interesting. And looking at how other people do stuff is always interesting. So, like, Cassie's breakdown of the times of things, I would have a hard time with that, but, I have huge blocks, like, in the morning, like, well, not huge blocks, but I wake up pretty early, or more accurately, my dog wakes me up early, and I've got, like, 2 hours before work. So what I need to do is, like, okay, if I schedule that time really well, like, that sets me up for, the rest of the day. If I'm moving my to-do list forward and maybe having some fun and bringing the dog for a walk, I can get all the things done. By the way, I'm impressed that the dog is not in here right now.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't notice.
So I bring my dog to work on Thursdays, and so she's normally hanging out under the table, but she's actually hanging out in the other room. So I'm pretty proud of her independence right now. Anyway, unrelated to systems, but so Cassie, what's a system that you've implemented either this month or recently that you think has, like, helped your life, whether it's here at work or whether it's at home?
Well, so my gaps are pretty interesting because I really only have systems here at work.
Yeah.
My personal life is pretty much in shambles when it comes to systems, which is kind of, I think, part of, I realized writing these blog posts, a lot of my stress is coming from, like, uncertainty in my day-to-day life. So, like, it's winter now, and I don't have consistent access to a treadmill at home anymore.
Oh, right.
So I have to either depend on the Y to be open and have a free treadmill, or the roads to be okay enough for me to run on. And
or find an alternative treadmill somewhere else.
The only other alternative treadmill that I have is in Millbridge or Cherryfield.
Got it. I'm seeing
yeah. So, and I don't have, like, a place to acquire one and put it, and also I can't afford a treadmill right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
If you were there. So that kind of, so my schedule used to be, like, work out in the morning, either inside or outside, because I had that option.
Yeah.
And, I would pretty routinely get ready for work. My food prep usually happened the night before because I had a pretty good system for getting all my food and stuff, which I don't have that anymore. So kind of writing this stuff, I was like, all of my stuff, like, is really on the fly day to day now because I can't make a decision until I can see it. Like, I can't see what the rows are doing, like.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't have time in the morning to, like, go to the Y and fight people, so I have to wait until after work. Which is not a good time of day for me to, like, get a good workout in.
Right, and that's when everybody else is there too.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of frustrating system-wise. So I would like to, my kind of 2017 goal is to get a better system in for food and working out and that. But at work,
we have some systems here.
Yeah.
I swear. It's the only, I think it keeps us productive, and if we're able to kind of take on more work or different kinds of work, then we're able to make more money, and
like,
we're
this
able
is
to
where all my
help more
systems
people.
happen.
Yeah.
Like, documentation wise, whether it's documenting stuff for clients. And the cool thing is, like, so say for instance, like, we do something on a website for a client, like some data entry stuff. Like, if it's a real estate person and they want to enter or remove, like, a new property listing.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to do it on their own. So I have to basically, and this is where I wrote a blog post on tasks. So one of the big things that I noticed in my reading was a thing called procedure list.
Yeah.
Which is basically the documentation we already do.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, when you go to like your mechanic, and they have to do an inspection, they have a checklist of like what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like your typical to-do list. It's just like check this, check this, check this, like step by step.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what we do. But and we talked about this, I think, last week a bit, the 4 different types of learners.
Yeah.
So one of the recommendations is to implement as many of the different learning styles as you can in your procedure list as an employer or someone making the list for someone else, because you might not necessarily know who's going to need it.
Right.
And you kind of want to cater to them to encourage them to implement your procedure.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with, what I kind of like about the checklist thing is that most things in life, it doesn't really matter what order you do. Like some things, it doesn't matter what order you do them in. You just need to make sure, like, oh, did this get done? But, it's also sometimes important the order which you do things, like,
Yes.
because then, like, if you do one thing before and suddenly it doesn't work and you're like, oh, right.
My example that I used in that blog post was, I think the laundry.
Yeah.
Like, step 1 might kind of needs to be, like, before you start washing, it has to be, like, separating colors and whites.
Yeah.
Because if you do that at, like, the end and it's on the checklist, it's like, well, the damage has been done.
Right.
And that's, like, not a super professional example, but that was, like,
Right.
the best.
Well, and sometimes in the documentation, we try to write things like, hey, so this developer is kind of, releases plugins slowly. So you want to update the WordPress, first, and then you want to put the, I try to like make a note and I try to bold it or something if we know if it's an ongoing issue, to just, let the person know. But ideally, you should be able to hand this to somebody and they should be able to do it. And sometimes, that involves screenshots, that can include videos, that can include, a lot of different things. So like thinking about, like Cass says, the different, like some people you hand them a binder and they're not gonna look at it, but they'll watch a video. So having the, your systems, especially if you're sharing them with a lot of other people in a few different formats, I think just makes it a little bit more likely that everyone's gonna actually try to follow it.
Yeah. And what I like about our documentation when we have like the screenshots and stuff, like if you're just reading a lot of those like super technical steps, like step by step without any visual, I'm kind of just like, am I in the right spot?
Yeah. Yeah. Does this look like the thing in front of me?
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing too is sometimes in our documentation, I try to put in a little something in the text. I feel like we do this on our blog too, because one of my friends was talking about our blog, and I said, you know what, like, I basically write our blog entries like somebody's going to look at the pictures and read the bold and the headlines. That's how I write the blog. I just assume that people are skimming it. But for the people who read everything, I have little like jokes or like little like funny things in it, so that if you do take the time to read the whole thing, you're sort of rewarded for it. And I try to do that in the documentation too. I'll like put something in like, this is really stupid, but you have to do this first. And then I feel like you and John are more likely to be like, oh, okay. Like, I feel like you're more likely to read that and be like, oh, okay. Versus, it just kind of makes it a little bit like,
this is stupid, but I should probably do this.
Yeah, like this is really stupid, but this is how it works best. Like, feel free to do it your own way. And it's interesting because the example that Sam Carpenter uses is that the reason that his company, I guess, came up with systems was that there was an employee that was doing a bank deposit and it didn't get done. Like it somehow like, I think she like got a call or something and like put it in like the area kind of between her seats or something like that, forgot about it. And like, so they were like missing $10,000 for like 5 days while they figured it out. And so what the guy so he was like, oh, this is stupid. Like we should just do it the same way every time. Like different people are bringing the deposits in and doing it in a different way. And it's really unclear, we should have known $10,000 was missing, A, right away, and B, it shouldn't have gotten lost in the first place, even if a phone call came up and, something kind of emergency-ish happened. So he wrote out the list of all the things that went into the bank deposit, and it was 35 steps. And when you write them out, you're like, oh my God, 35 steps to make a bank deposit. But think about it, like, go to the P.O. box, open the envelopes, scan all the checks, send it to the bookkeeper, fill out the deposit. It's like anything you do, like 35 steps seems ridiculous. But if you actually list out the steps, you're thinking, yeah, that's nuts. It is nuts how long it takes to do something.
But
or
the
how
other
much
cool
thought
thing
goes
is-
into it.
Right. The other cool thing is if you write out that list and you share it with someone else, they might be able to spot like
This is
inefficiencies,
stupid.
like, what's this step all about? Like, why do you need to see this?
Yeah.
The other thing, what was I gonna say? Something writing out list. Oh, the other important thing to do when you're writing out the procedure list is like, you might have your vision of like how in a perfect world this task would be carried out, but when you're writing the list you really have to, there's the what you think the task should be and then what it actually is. And you kind of have to focus on what it actually is in order to make it like efficient and like helpful for other people.
Well, and something I will say too is, so we have an employee retreat every year, and there's always a component at the end. And it was funny, my business coach kind of told me to do this. So like, have a part at the end where everyone like gives a presentation or does some like does a training, like presents to the group. And I'm like, okay, that seems really inefficient, but whatever. Not because I know everything, but because I'm like, I don't want to make people stand up. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable.
And like,
so
the other three of us are like all pretty like in her little shell.
So anyway, so there was 4 of us at this retreat, and I assigned everyone a topic to present on. It's about software we use or something like that. And it's like 10 minutes, right? 15 minutes. And so, Alelia, who worked with us for like 6 months, I assigned her our password management system. And I'm like, whatever, I know everything I need to know about this stupid password management system. But then she showed us this, like, basically in our password management system, when you go into it, you basically go to the web page that you want to log into or whatever. You go to the password management system and you click on perform auto type, or I think there's like a little shortcut. Yeah, there's like a little shortcut. And it takes the username and it puts it right in. So we're sitting there and we're like,
how much time that saved us collectively over the past year,
right?
Using auto-type.
Like, so it's probably, every time I log into a website, which is honestly like at least 20 times a day, it saves me, 10 to 20 seconds at least of finding, copying and pasting it in.
Mm-hmm.
I can just, and so it probably saves me, a minute a day. But if I work, whatever, 5 times 4. If I work 20 days a month, that's 20 minutes. And then everybody saving 20 minutes a day, like, for something. But I would have never thought of that. So having other people look at your procedures is really good, because then you can see some things about it that maybe you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So, yeah. I always think, every time I do perform auto type, I always think of her, and I'm like, yeah, we should do this stuff more often. Because I certainly haven't thought of everything for systems, that's for sure. But I think part of my systems issue that I realized in writing these blog posts is the hardest ones to write were about, like, really, the hardest one that I wrote was about managing your personal relationships, because it feels cold and calculating to think that there's a system.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because you're like, these are people, like, I shouldn't need a system, but I want to be the kind of person that remembers everyone's birthday without having to go to Facebook. And so that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to put everyone's birthday in some kind of system so that I could know about it, ideally a few days ahead of time. I could stick a card in the mail or something like that. I didn't do it because I didn't have a system. I didn't pick a way that I was going to do it, and so it didn't happen. So I sort of, I guess I'm putting it on my list for 2017. But so it's not. I guess what I realized is it's not a cold calculating thing, because it's not like, oh, how am I going to manipulate these people to do what I want them to do? It's like how am I going to stay in touch with the people that are important in my life that, I don't get to see very often, or, who have important days like birthdays or anniversaries or, kids' birthdays, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just like a way to be more thoughtful. You put more thought into being thoughtful, I guess. So like I said, So as I was writing the personal relationships one, which I get hasn't come out yet, I was like really struggling with, how do I make people understand that, like, I'm not a socially awkward person. I just want to, like, be thoughtful, and I need some help being thoughtful. There's some people who I know who are just naturally that way, but, like, I just want to be that, so I have to put a system in place so I can be.
I'm better, like, on the fly, like, spur of the moment. Like, sometimes I'll be, like, running or something, and I'm like, oh, I should, like, check in with so-and-so, and, like, because they have that thing coming up. But then the thing is, like, I don't have a system in place, so, like, when I'm scrambling around trying to, like, get food and stuff after my run and, like, get to work and reasonably okay. Like, oh wait, I didn't do that thing. So I could probably use a system for like my follow throughs where I.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's not
Because it doesn't count when you're like, oh, I was thinking of doing this thing for you, but I didn't do it.
Well, I will say though, if you're ever somewhere and you just see something and I was trying to tell one of my friends about this. I'm like, listen, if you're somewhere and you see something that makes you think of me, just like take a picture of it and send it. You don't have to buy it for me. Honestly, like just getting a text message, like of being like, hey, here's this really stupid T-shirt. I'm not going to buy it for you, but when I saw it, I thought of you. Like, that's lovely. That is worth almost you don't need to buy me the T-shirt. Just like that you thought of me is all I want. Especially this time of year where you realize how much crap you have and you're like, oh my God, I have so much stuff. And I'm about to acquire more because it's the holidays and people are going to buy me gifts. So, but yeah.
I accept gifts in like the form of food.
Yeah.
Those are like the best gifts.
Yeah, the consumable stuff is always nice. Or experiences, But sometimes, sometimes people are going to give you something they wrap up and that's fine. But so anyway, this is what we figured this time of year. Everybody was thinking about New Year's resolutions and they were thinking about how to be more efficient and how to be more effective and how to be, how to get more done in their life without spending more energy. And that's what the system is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be this cold, impersonal, thing. It can just be I go grocery shopping on Sunday mornings and I do my food prep Sunday afternoon and Wednesday morning for 2 hours or something,
And I know a lot of people, like my former whimsical self included, shied away from systems because it seemed like it just sounded like really rigid and inflexible, but there's room for flexibility within systems. Like all of, like when I'm over at the Y and when I'm here, like each one of my things that I do, like when I do a newsletter, I have a system for how I do that. Or when I do a blog post or when I edit, like there's systems within all of that. And when I'm over at the Y, it's like I'm not totally rigid in like, okay, I wipe down like these machines. I interact with people for like these 5 minutes. Like I can't just like schedule in when I get to interact with people. Like that's part of my job. Like if people need to talk to me, I have to drop what I'm doing, and that's really okay. Systems can be a little flexible.
Absolutely, and I think
like if you run into someone on your way to do the bank deposit and you want to like catch up a little bit, like that's
and we're not telling you how to go to the bank. If you want to bike there, if you want to walk there, like but but if it's always done on a certain day, that's a good thing to figure out.
Or like if you want to wait until like maybe like 3 after you've gotten all the mail for the day, but like before the bank closes, like give yourself a little window of time. But
absolutely, you just build it in, and what you find in living with systems is sometimes they have to change. You'll do them some things a certain way for a while, and then you'll have to change the way you do it because circumstances change, because that person is no longer available at that time, or that software changed and now doesn't have that functionality or whatever. So it's okay to change. It's okay to revisit the system. And something that I've done in our calendar, which you probably noticed, there's lots of weird notes in our calendar, I'm sure. Poor Cassie is like, well, what the hell? But I have a check in about this software. Do we still like it? So like once a year, when I buy a new piece of software, I like put in the date that it's due, and I put like, okay, do we still like it? Like, are we going to keep using it, or is there something better? Because otherwise you could just kind of coast and just keep using something that just isn't working well.
Yeah, and that's not, the point is to be more efficient, not like, completely comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so have some systems. I mean, give yourself, like Cassie said, some time to, some creativity with how you do the task, but like, the checklist, and so you're able to share it with other people. Because
cha-cha teller.
Yeah, no one's telling you how to walk up to the teller. No one's telling you not to like use, purple ink to sign your checks. Like, feel free to find some creativity within the task. Just because it's a procedure doesn't mean you can't do that. But the point is that you should be saving your brain power, not for these tasks, but for things you want to be doing, like writing your great American novel, or, thinking of, and that's what a system will do. A system will let you get the thing done without you having to spend a lot of mental energy on it, because you have other things to think about. I'm sure you do. But we all do. Every one of us. So I don't know. Is there anything you want to say about systems?
Just that I'm looking forward to finding more.
Yeah.
popular.
And
areas
lots of
in
people
LA.
have, you know, really great. So Sam Carpenter's book, Work the System, it's free for PDF download, and it also has a free audiobook on his website. I'll put the link in the show notes. And there's lots of other people. You want to subscribe to our email newsletter because that's coming out next Friday. This Friday? Next Friday?
Next Friday.
Next Friday. Okay.
Well, it depends on 19th falls on a weird. I think it's
Yeah, it
like
is.
the Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, okay. So next Friday, our newsletter will come out about systems that will have our blog posts and things like that. So
I'm very excited about my noteworthy sections.
yeah. So like I said, so next Friday our newsletter comes out. So just go to breakingeveninc.com/newsletter and you can subscribe to it, and you can get all the posts about systems that we've written, and they're beautiful and they're lovely. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and we will be back next Thursday with another topic. If you have an idea.
Well, I won't be here, but
Cassie won't be here, but it'll be me. So basically, if you have any questions that you want me to answer or any topics you want me to cover, just put a comment on about the internet, about
so
the internet for
it's
business.
like I'm going to ask you a random question next week.
Ask me anything. It's like Reddit except live video. So feel free to leave a comment on this video or go to our website and just send a quick message through the contact form, and it'll get to us. So.
And if you want to remain anonymous.
Yeah, we'll keep you anonymous. No problem. I can come up with a funny pseudonym for you.
If you prefer that.
Totally. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. We'll all see you next week. Cassie's on vacation, so good for her.
Woohoo.
All right, bye everyone.